Day or night. It's test night. Between working on a backlog and other side projects, I haven't really had time to read any more of the Fnaf stories, so I'm still running on the knowledge I had from last time. This is a part 2, so I highly recommend watching my part 1 or else you may be confused. On to the story portion of the video. The Emilys and the Aftons weren't the only ones affected by the happenings on. It was 1987. Jeremy, one of Michael's friends, started working for the company, moving from night shift where the animatronics seemed a bit more alive than he remembered them being years ago, to day shift one day. He could stop what happened to Cassidy and Charlie happening to any other children. To be fair, it worked. No other child was hurt the day he worked there, but Jeremy suffered a frontal lobe injury. It's amazing what the human body can survive. Maybe they mistook him for someone else. Someone who had led more kids away. This time around, William noticed something he couldn't quite put his finger on. The old animatronics, the withered animatronics, along with the puppet were acting weird, but he couldn't go back into the location. It was being shut down. Luckily for him, the withered animatronics he wanted to investigate were being used in an older location, in hopes of reopening. Night after night, he snuck in, led the animatronics to the back, and dismantled them. He had to figure out what was making them act weird. Act out! Like unruly children. That's when he noticed faint figures. They looked familiar. He could make out Harley and Susie, and they were his victims. All 5 of them. They cornered him in the back room. He panicked as Charlie approached him, questioning him. He had to get out of here. He had to regain control. There he saw it. Spring Bunny had been carelessly shoved into the back room. That would be his escape. But he failed to realize it hadn't been cared for in years. It wasn't in the same condition he had used it in to lure the children back initially. And so, damp back room, he died. His soul lived on in his rotting body. He watched as Henry found him and sealed him back there. He would live to regret that, but William had to wait. Enter Michael, who had lost 2 sisters and watched one of his closest friends get chomped, who had been a victim of induced nightmares for years. William had told him if he ever went missing, go back to his old workshop and put Baby back together. And so, Michael did as he was told, and suffered the consequences of having the terrible luck of being an Afton. The animatronics tricked him, scooped his insides out, using his body as their new vessel to be their escape. All Michael could do was be along for the ride. His skin sagged and rotted, but he wouldn't die. He couldn't. Had so many questions for his father. Finally, the things left his body. He decided to go location by location, looking for his father. Instead, he found someone else. Every so often, at a particularly spooky location, the golden bear would pop up in his vision. Rather, the golden bear. Constant. It's me. In his ears. In his mind. Then, he listened. That was Cassidy. She was reaching out. Her friends were here. They were in pain. Her and Charlie wanted to help them move on. Michael decided to help them. To make it up to Cassidy. For everything. One by one, he visited each Fredbear location. If the animatronic seemed odd, he'd burn it down. He had to. According to his father's research, high temperatures freed the souls. Eventually, he was hired into Fazbear Frights. He hated everything it stood for, the sins of his father, and the franchise that tore his family apart. And he saw it, Spring Bonnie, his father's favorite. Looked worse for the wear, but it acted odd. Like the possessed animatronics, but more human, like Baby. But Springtrap wasn't anything like Baby, at least when it came to the components. Then he saw it through the breaks in the costume. Human flesh. Suddenly, his father's disappearance made sense. His father died. He was here. Michael decided he had to burn it all. Destroy his father. Then he and the children could rest. Except it didn't work. Michael lived, which meant his father lived. Michael felt awful. He knew at least Charlie couldn't rest, even if the others did. That's when the ad popped up for a franchisee. Felt odd, but there was only one person who could okay such a thing. Henry. There's no way Henry didn't know everything. No way he didn't have a plan. So Michael applied, and he got accepted. It was exactly as he expected. Every remaining animatronic was lured in. His father, Elizabeth, Charlie, the amalgamation of pain that were the children murdered from his father's experience. All of it was burned. He and Henry could rest. William was gone. Michael was free. He should have been gone. Maybe it was just something about the Aftons that they refused to stay down. Cassidy now knew what her father had done. He had hurt her friends, forced them into bodies they once loved, but now grew to hate. She had been tricked. Cassidy wanted him to pay for everything. For Susie, for Frisk, Gabriel and Jeremy, for Elizabeth, for Charlie, even herself. Her father would pay for all the suffering he had incurred. Charlie was a protector, but Cassidy? Cassidy was an Afton. Apparently they could survive on hatred and spite alone. She would make her father suffer as everyone else had suffered. No matter how much everyone else just wanted her to move on, leave the demon to his demons. But Cassidy had to do this. But something went wrong. Maybe he was able to escape punishment because of Cassidy. One moment they were fighting each other and the next they were in a game? Someone on the outside restarted the company. Found and used the old circuit boards, the one her father had corrupted. She was just as powerless as him right now. Probably less. He managed to get the attention of a tester and push her off into a game called Princess Quest. Tester initially was an old face. He had definitely grown up since William last saw him. Jeremy, one of Mike's friends, one of the monsters that had killed his precious Cassidy, causing the little soul to turn against him. He would take his body. At least that was the plan. Jeremy avoided it by slicing his own face, escaping once again. Then Vanessa showed up. She was so much like Elizabeth. So manipulable. So in need of validation. She would be perfect for William's plans. Maybe not as best for himself, but definitely as an apprentice of sorts. All he needed was to be released in one part of the Pizzaplex's system. He could infect the rest from there. He hadn't planned on a child getting in his way, nor did he expect Freddy, going into safe mode, would release the bot from his influence. Gregory got away. First, he eventually took Vanessa with him, and William's new body. They had help, of course. Jeremy had followed Vanessa into the building and had figured out Vanessa could be released through the Princess Quest games. Through Cassie defeating parts of him and freeing Vanessa's consciousness. How the pair discovered each other and figured it out was beyond William, but with Jeremy accepting the Vanny chip, he was able to slowly trick Jeremy into releasing him once again. Or that was the plan before they freed Vanessa. Now William just wanted to destroy this pest and everything he stood for. He used some of his strength to shove Jeremy's consciousness into his staff, but now he had to wait, watching the mimic that was meant to be his body get locked away. Then she showed up. Jeremy's daughter. Cassie. The guilt is what caused Jeremy to return to Freddy so many times. He even honored Cassidy by naming his own child after her. She would be the perfect next apprentice. And William would make what was left of Jeremy hand her the key. I don't feel like I need to explain a lot this time, as a lot of what happens can be inferred from what we see in the games. I took some ideas from game theory. Retire in peace, Matt Pat. When it came to stuff like Michael burning down locations he found that were haunted, but once we reach Pizzeria Simulator, things are pretty cut and dry with what happened. The events of Help Wanted 1, the events of Security Breach, the events of Help Wanted 2, and then Ruin. The biggest leap in logic here is Crying Child being the vengeful spirit in Pizzeria Simulator. But it's more of a, if A is true, then B must be true. So, if Crying Child is Cassidy, Cassidy is the princess, and the princess is the vengeful spirit, then the Crying Child is the vengeful spirit. Again, I need to make a new Cassidy is Crying Child video with the new information from Help Wanted 2. Now as to why I say more than the MCI were nabbed. A few reasons. To me, there's no way for William to dismantle all the Era 1 animatronics and make it back to Sister Location to build the Fun Times before getting sealed in the wall. Plus, the Fun Times were earlier in the timeline. Fun Times were likely rented out and kidnapped kids to use for experimentation. Not to mention, there needs to be a reason the FNAF 2 location gets shut down. And we know the Bonnie suit was used. So it didn't get taken down just from Jeremy's bite. And the animatronics, especially Mangle, who we assumed did the chomp, need a reason to attack Jeremy. Either their AI was buggy, or they're possessed as well. I guess you could argue Charlie was controlling the toy animatronics. Then we went to the issue of the Aftons are very white, or purple, in most of their appearances, and if Jeremy is the Bonnie Mask kid, which 1 of 2 highly implies, and Cassie's dad, which I believe he is, then that is a man of color. And even if the animatronics have a rudimentary camera system that only sees black and white, there's no mistaking Jeremy for William. The only way this attack makes sense is none of these animatronics knowing the killer. However, under the story I presented, at least, Cassidy, aka Crying Child, knows it's a rabbit mascot, and it can't be Jeremy because he was too young. He's who caused her death. That's it for this video. This timeline took months to finish. I started writing part 1 expecting it to be a longer just one-parter around November last year, but I was waiting for Up Wanted 2 to come out, so I held off. Then part 1 just had so much information, it felt like the story parts could be their own video, and the explain parts could be their own video. Plus, there were some kinks to work out for the video, so it got pushed out a bit. But that's my early 2024 FNAF timeline. It may change as I finish reading books and Into the Pit comes out. I likely will not be making another timeline video at least until next year, once I've read more books and have more insight. That's all for me. Have a good week and try not to mourn Matt Pat's retirement too much.